AI was supposed to make us more productive, which was supposed to mean working less. Yeah, a new study from UC Berkeley put researchers inside a tech company for 8 months and found, well, the complete opposite. People using AI tools worked more, not less. And to be honest, this mirrors exactly my experience and our company's experience too. The study found that people took on broader responsibilities. The line between work and rest blurred very fast and filled up every single minute with more and more tasks. Nobody told them to. The tools just made it easy enough that stopping felt like a waste of time. Today I'm covering exactly what researchers found, why this pattern has repeated with every major labor-saving technology from the past 100 years, and what a sociologist's theory of social acceleration tells us about why productivity tools just never seem to produce that spare leisure time that they seem to promise. This is In the Loop with Jack Horton. I hope you enjoy the show. So in February 2026, 2 researchers at Berkeley's Haas School of Business published a piece in the Harvard Business Review with a title that, well, it tells you a lot of things. It says, AI doesn't reduce work, it intensifies it. They'd spent 8 months inside a 200-person tech company watching how people actually use AI tools in their day-to-day work. So not in a lab, not a self-reported study. They were on site twice a week from April to December 2025. And they did more than 40 in-depth interviews across engineering and product, design, research, operations. And they found 3 distinct patterns of work intensification. And all 3 of them were actually voluntary. And nobody was being forced to do more. So let me run through those. The first was task expansion. The second was blurred boundaries. And the third was compulsive multitasking. So for the first, task expansion, they called it. Basically, they found that product managers started writing code, researchers took on engineering work, people suddenly started absorbing tasks that would have definitely been handed off to another person in their team, or just never attempted, because AI just made it feel possible. And the downstream effect of this wasn't efficiency, it was actually just load redistribution, removing some bottlenecks and redistributing it across teams. Engineers found themselves becoming, as well, the researcher described, and as most people working with AI coding, quality inspectors for what could be described as a sometimes fantastic but often junior colleague. As I said, you had product managers starting to write code themselves. In the product function, we're already starting to see product managers pick up smaller bugs or tasks. The same with designers. Why would a designer design things just in Figma when you could be in Claude Code with access to the code base on your local machine and start to create things as well that could actually just be merged there and then? We've seen this happen. Everyone across our product organization is now in an IDE, a developer environment, basically. So suddenly everyone in the team has access to the entire code base, both to talk to investigate ideas and problems and theories, to plan work, but also to just start fixing things and getting stuck in. And if people have the right system set up, like our company has, suddenly anyone can start to produce something. So yeah, that task expansion suddenly means that people are just doing more work that they previously didn't do. And this brings us on to the second area of work intensification that AI brought, which was blurred boundaries. So because prompting in AI is just so simple and easy, it literally takes seconds, it feels like nothing, work started to easily seep into a lunch break. You could go on your phone, I do this all the time, and just quickly voice note Claude because you know it's important for the next task and you want to make sure that Claude is working whilst you rest and eat. I'm terrible for this, whether I'm with friends, whether I'm having lunch, whether I'm in a meeting. I'm thinking about what the next prompt is or the next thing is that I need this different set of AIs to go and do for me. And so very easily I have 4, 5, 6 tasks going on and I'm doing them and managing them at all times of the day. So yeah, the researchers found that workers realized, often in hindsight, that downtime no longer provided that same sense of recovery. And as a result, work felt even less bounded and a bit more ambient. Something that could always be advanced a little bit further with just a little bit of effort. So again, that was another way that AI intensified work. And this comes on to the third way that AI intensified work, which was compulsive multitasking. Suddenly, they found that workers are running multiple AI processes just at the same time, keeping several threads alive at once, reviving, certain tasks because the AI could just handle them in the background. And in this research study, they actually said, and I quote, "This created a rhythm where both the human and the machine were constantly in motion." And I think one engineer captured this fantastically in this paper. You had a thought that maybe, because you could be more productive with AI, then you could save some time and you could therefore work less. But then really, you don't work less, you just work the same amount or even more. And our team often jokes about this. Barry, the CEO, who programs every single day, often jokes that it's made him tireder than ever before in his entire career. And as I said, I'm terrible for this, just suddenly multitasking all the time with different tasks. And it could even be personal tasks as well. Like personal projects I'm making sure I've got on the go. And just naturally, you suddenly have increased expectations to produce more work. And as a result of those expectations rising, there's no real productivity gain because you fill that spare time doing more to meet that expectation. So yeah, these three patterns created a self-reinforcing cycle. And the research report talks about this. Essentially, AI accelerated certain tasks which raised expectations for speed, not through suddenly explicit demands, but just what became visible and normalized in everyday work. Higher speed made workers more reliant on AI, increased reliance on AI widened the scope of what therefore people attempted to do, taking on tasks from another person's job role. And as a result of that wider scope, the total volume of work therefore suddenly increased. And then the cycle continues with nobody really at the controls. So yeah, increased capability leads to increased output, which leads to increased expectations, which then increase the amount of pressure to expand and improve further. So essentially, self-regulation failed. Self-regulation of all of us individuals has completely failed. And the researchers were quite explicit about why they think this happened. And they put it down to three reasons, which is, number one, the intensification felt really rewarding. Workers described momentum and the ability to expand capability, or the thrill of suddenly being able to do things they'd never done before. I've certainly felt that. It's a huge driver. Second, because the work was voluntary, neither the workers nor their managers recognized it as overwork. And third, as colleagues expanded their output, informal expectations also reset. So what was once, extra effort became just, the minimum standard of expectation for performance. And I think for those that have gone really far into using AI within teams, structuring everything around AI and how to get the best out of AI, like our entire way of working at our company is structured around AI, you're probably going to resonate with a lot of what I'm saying. It's described exactly what's happened at Mindset. Our output is insane. And what you might expect from a single person over weeks a year ago, I have an expectation to produce in days. Because I know it's possible if you're using AI properly. Again, back to that skills discussion last week. And it's really interesting. I mean, for those that listen every single week, any opportunity to look back in time and try to understand, why does this feel like it keeps happening? Because it isn't new. So there's a really interesting history to this and a really interesting theory about why us as humans cannot just be satisfied with that increased output and suddenly have leisure time to go enjoy with our family and our hobbies and do things that are nice. Because this isn't new. And this pattern has repeated with almost every technology sold as a time saver for over 100 years. In the 1920s, the average American woman spent roughly 60 hours a week on housework. So cooking, cleaning, washing, fixing things. And so by the 50s, there was now a washing machine, a vacuum cleaner, a refrigerator, and a gas stove in most people's homes. And so the difference between the 1920s spending 60 hours a week and the 50s with all that new technology to make things easier, what do we think the housewife spent on cleaning per week? It was about 60 hours a week again. And you can look at other technologies. For the spreadsheet, 20 hours of manual calculation suddenly done in 15 minutes. Well, what was the outcome? Accounting clerks, so people doing accounting, fell by 400,000 people when it was invented. Yet accountants and auditors rose by over 600,000. With email, a handful of memos per day became 121 emails in 11 hours of work a week. For cars, a researcher found that in 1994, humans spent roughly 1 hour per day commuting, regardless of era, culture, and even technology. So basically, as cars got better, we traveled for further inside them because they were better and it was easier to travel. The point being, the mechanism is always the same. So technology gets better and reduces the cost per unit of that activity. So it makes it easier to do that thing. Yet, as a result, the volume of that activity just increases. So we do more of it. And we just consume the savings in time and effort that we would have gained regardless of the technology. So that new volume just becomes the baseline. And there's a lot of theories behind this. There's a well-known thinker who explains how this happens perfectly called Hartmut Rosa, a German sociologist. And it gives you a really interesting perspective on not just this discussion, but why the world often in modern times just feels quite chaotic. You know, Rosa's core argument, which was laid out in the book Social Acceleration, is that modern societies are caught in what he describes a triple acceleration. So you get technology acceleration, so things just get faster. Acceleration of social change, so institutions, norms, and expectations shift really fast as a consequence. And the acceleration of the pace of life, despite all the time-saving technology, individuals just feel more time pressure. And the critical insight, I think, is that these three just feed into each other, into a loop that has no natural stopping point, and which is just the story of capitalism. Rosa actually called this the process of dynamic stabilisation, which is essentially a fancy word for that modern institutions and companies and economies can only maintain their stability by continually trying to grow and accelerate and go faster. And standing still means you're falling behind. Just like the bicycle, you have to just constantly keep pedaling, otherwise you're just going to fall over. So what's really interesting about this is, and why does it explain why everything continually still feels the same, no matter how much cool technology comes about? Well, Rosa called that standstill, which is when everything is in constant motion, but nothing changes. So the act of constantly being in motion means that nothing can change. Technology shifts, fashion changes, work gets busier, and yet the basic experience of falling or feeling like you're behind, feeling stretched, feeling like things are never enough, that just stays the same because the treadmill's only getting faster. And I think that Berkeley study is a case study of this playing out on the level of individual workers and AI. But the more they did, the more that was expected. And, this expectation becomes the new flaw. And that's why AI, so far, doesn't save us time. It makes us work more. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that episode, and I'll see you next week.